A short-haired, brown-headed enby in a chocolate brown jumper and a almond-coloured t-shirt sits in front of a pale blue wall with a white hook hanging off the wall and a blue denim jacket hanging off the hook, and in a wheelchair and rambles and a camera. Here in my home on Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Ngarigo lands, bringing you mental health musings. It's been obviously a bit of a journey since the last mental health musings post, which was posted more than a month ago. It was recorded more than a month ago, posted last week on suicide prevention. Just make a link there. The chair has got nothing to do with suicidal ideation. It has to do with my deteriorating osteoarthritis. But that's a story for another time. For those of you that have been following my social media feeds, they will have seen that now 3 weeks ago, began my job at ANU as a research assistant in the Centre for Mental Health and the National Centre for Population Health and Epidemiology, or what we call NCEF. Part of the first 3 weeks has been obviously a lot of onboarding, and I have been so very excited to have gone through the ANUHR probation modules. 2 of them are part of a 10 module series that I will be completing on what it is to be living in a country that is hopefully starting to move towards acknowledging our First Nations people as the rightful custodians of this land. But it's actually led me to wanting to make a post about this. I'm increasingly coming across a lot of people. I'm sure it's not that it's becoming more obvious, it's just that I'm coming into contact with it more. A lot of people in my circles lately are saying things like, I don't know why we have to do an acknowledgement of country. We said sorry. What's the problem? And honestly, I wish everybody could do the ANU HR training that I've just done and will continue to do in terms of these particular modules, because there is so much richness in what I've already completed. But I want to start with a quote from an ANU academic and translator who is recorded in the module talking about culture. Her name is Elizabeth Lizzie McKinney-Ellis, and I'm really hoping one day I get to meet her. But she says this about culture, and this is where I want to start. Culture is a way of living that isn't set in stone. You don't live a certain way forever. You are always continually changing the way you live to your environment. Things change. You change. And I want to back that up with a section from the preamble for the 2001 Universal Declaration on Culture Diversity from UNESCO, or the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization. Culture should be regarded as a set of distinctive, spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features of society or a social group, in addition to art and literature, lifestyle, ways of living together, value systems, traditions, and beliefs. I love the wisdom of what Lizzie has to say on culture. It really hit home to me as someone that has been through a very long and protracted journey with mental health challenges, with understanding the trauma and how that shaped my life. And one of the things I could not ever get over was in the many, many years that I often say I lived on mental health inpatient units because of the frequency of the 15 years or so that I haunted them, was the amount of Indigenous people I shared rooms with, or shared meals with, or shared TV rooms with. And it really horrified me because realistically, When you look at our population statistics, Indigenous people make up 3% of our population. And yet on some occasions in some of those emissions, there was almost probably a 30-70 representation. 30% of the unit would be people who were Indigenous, which says a lot about the adverse effects of intergenerational trauma, of all of the ways in which life is so much harder for our Indigenous First Nations brothers and sisters. I've been quite frankly horrified recently because I was on LinkedIn. I had a recruiter reach out to me and ask me to apply for an Indigenous specific job. And one of the things that I'm increasingly realising when I talk to people who are actually just making very innocent mistakes in where I put a acknowledgement of country in all of my posts, and that was something that I began probably about July last year. People assume that because I'm acknowledging the Indigenous elders of the lands that I'm currently posting from, that I must be First Nations. And I really want to come out now and correct that myth. I am not a First Nations person, not at least that I know about. I've not done genetic studies, but I know enough of my family history to think there's probably no First Nations blood running through these veins. I am a Second Nations person, but I have grown and changed throughout my life. We all grow and change, and it really wasn't until I was sharing those mental health inpatient units with so many Indigenous people that I learned how beautiful they were, how incredible they were, and in what adverse circumstances they live under. When you go back and consider that we have higher rates of incarceration, higher suicide rates in a much smaller population than the rest of us, higher early deaths, higher levels of mental health challenges and diagnoses, there's something really wrong with our world. There's something really wrong with the society in which we continue to marginalise the people that our ancestors sought to wipe out. Sorry Day was a big step in our history, but we don't do acknowledgements to country as some way of saying, oh, whoops, we better give the land back to you. There's deep, beautiful and ancient wisdom in a welcome to country and an acknowledgement to country. It's about saying, I understand and I respect the wisdom of the people that have gone before me and the people that will come after me that have cared for this land in ways that my culture will not allow for or have not allowed for. Reconciliation is about us all moving towards a world in which we respect the people that are now so marginalised in our society. We are losing Indigenous languages. We are losing Indigenous people, and it's just wrong. I will continue to have an acknowledgement to country in all of my posts. But I also know what many people maybe don't know, which is that when people travel to this land, for our First Nations elders and ancestors and those that have gone before us and go now and will come after us, and they move into an area that is not their traditional lands, they wait for the elders of that area to come and offer a welcome to country, because it means it's a blessing. And if you don't respect it, you are not protected by the elders in that area. Now, I'm not getting into the spirituality of what you may or may not believe. I want to challenge you, though. This wisdom is 60,000 years old. This fly doesn't want to leave me alone. This wisdom is 60,000 years old. And as far as I'm concerned, if having an acknowledgement to country means that I am able to show just a little bit of respect, that's why it's there. But I'm not First Nations. I will never speak for First Nations perspectives. But I am grateful for the unceded lands of the Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Ngarigo people, on which I live and breathe and believe that we can do better. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and future. Bye.